In today's video, we're taking a look at the latest NHL trade rumblings around teams like the Anaheim Ducks. Could we see guys like John Gibson, Rickard Rakell, Josh Manson, or others on the move either before or during the season? We're also going to talk a little bit today about the Ottawa Senators and their desire to acquire another veteran center here to add to the mix. And it's rumored they're expected to name a captain as well. And we have another signing in Calgary. All that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, we have a variety of things to talk about here today. I want to start off with the signing we had announcement in Calgary. Now, of course, this is the third fairly significant signing we had announced today. There are videos on the channel already for the Andrei Svechnikov signing. That was the first one up today, getting an 8-year, $62 million contract. Then, of course, we had Sean Couturier. There's also a dedicated video on his signing as well with the Philadelphia Flyers. Also an 8-year, $62 million extension for the top center for the Philadelphia Flyers in that regard as well. So certainly some big contracts given out here today. Now, this one's not quite as significant, but still an important player. The Calgary Flames have re-signed restricted free agent forward Dillon Dube. Now, his average annual value is going to be $2.3 million, and he is now locked up for a 3-year bridge deal. So this does a couple of things. It gets him a pretty good cost-controlled contract. It's a little bit, I guess you could say, somewhat backloaded, but not entirely. His contract goes 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, a slight raise each year. So the 2.4 in the final year will be what's based on the qualifying offer. And at the same time, he's still a restricted free agent when this is all said and done. So he'll have one more year under his belt before he's qualifying for unrestricted free agency. So when you see these 3-year bridge deals, you're either going to get a 1-year deal going to free agency or usually a longer-term extension at that point, which I would assume would be the preferred way for both parties here to handle this. I mean, Dube's been with the Flames now for some time. He was originally drafted in the second round in 2016. He's been basically full-time for about 2 years. Last year, in a shortened season and a 56-game campaign, he played in 51 games, putting up 11 goals and 22 points. The year before, which was the shortened season due to the pandemic and the shutdown of the league for several months before resuming in the bubble playoffs, he had put up 16 points in 45 games. So obviously, Dube was a player that's been coming along nicely, had a solid junior career, played for Canada World Juniors, was a good leader, looked upon as being a potential piece for the core for this team moving forward. So I do like this contract. It's pretty fair, pretty good overall, and I'm curious to see just how big of a role he will kind of grow himself into ahead of the during this next contract, I should say, because I think he's going to be quite a strong power forward type of player for them long term here down the road. Now, before we jump into the trade section of today's video, I do want to pause for a moment and acknowledge our channel sponsor, Manscaped. Top Shelf Hockey is proud to be sponsored by Manscaped. Of course, with Manscaped, we have a special offer here for all Top Shelf Hockey viewers where you can get 20% off and free shipping on all orders at manscaped.com. Now, of course, Manscaped just launched a brand new Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, which is a fantastic product. They've taken the level up here, even again with the skin-safe replaceable blades. It's waterproof, it's wireless charging, has a travel lock on it, as well as a nice light so you don't miss what you're doing. So certainly a terrific product. Now, many people associate Manscaped with their trimmers, which is certainly kind of their top product, but they do have a lot of other great options as well, including what they call the Weed Whacker, which is another trimmer for your ears and nose. And they have a variety of deodorants and sprays as well, which also keep you fresh and are terrific as well. So certainly Manscaped has a lot to offer, and we certainly highly recommend all of their products. So check out manscaped.com and use promo code TSH for 20% off and free shipping. So thanks very much for watching that promotional content. I do greatly appreciate it. A couple of things I do want to remind you of here. For one, as we mentioned, we do have a sale on our merchandise, which has been doing phenomenal, by the way. Again, thank you very much for your support. These hoodies have been by far the top seller. Some of the new t-shirts have been selling at a good rate as well, so I'm quite pleased with that. It seems like the new concept, new design has been well received. So that's awesome to see. I'll put the graphic here on the screen so you can get the promo codes for the either free shipping or the discount, depending on where you live. If you're American, you get a free shipping code. And if you're in Canada, you get a 10% off because I can't do free shipping for that. But I can give you a discount to help offset some of that some of that cost that you'll incur in that regard. So again, thanks very much for all the merchandise sales, the super thanks, the extra support. It really goes a long way to really helping the channel grow, and I greatly appreciate that. Now, before we jump into the trade talk, I want to address a couple of things because, to be completely honest, I'm getting really kind of tired of addressing it in the comment section. And this is not widespread. This is really only applies to probably a handful of people. Usually, most of these types of videos, there's a couple. And I'm just getting a little sick of it. So, for example, you know, when a video is first posted, I'll see comments in the first couple of minutes saying, that trade's never going to happen. Or one, like yesterday, said, oh, you must be on crack. The Blues are never going to trade Colton Parayko. You know, and this things like that, like totally dismissing and making it sound like I'm basically making up trade rumors when that's not what we do here. I don't sit here every day and kind of scratch my head and go, okay, what player are we going to talk about today? Who am I going to pretend is getting traded and make up some stories about them? That's not how we do things. I always reference articles that we're talking about and where the information is coming from and giving my analysis and opinions. That's what we do here. That's what the channel concept is. I want to create a community where we can discuss things maturely, which is the key point here, and not dismiss each other's opinions. I want people to feel comfortable sharing their thoughts and opinions and not feel like they're going to have people jump down their throats, call them dumb or anything like that, because that's not, it's not cool and it's not what we want. So for starters, like I said, I see people commenting like that, and it's not a lot, but it's enough to kind of drive me a little bit nuts lately. I don't normally I don't let these things get to me, and I'm pretty easygoing. It takes a lot to get under my skin, but there's just been a few that's just been picking away just enough lately that I'm just a little agitated by it, and I just don't want the community to be impacted by that because I don't want people in the comments to feel uncomfortable. That's my biggest concern. I don't really care too much what people say about me personally. I can take criticism if it's justified, sure, you know, but it's all about how it's delivered. So again, I reference articles. So if you think an idea is stupid, as some people say, or it's never going to happen, or that guy's going nowhere is one of my favorites, maybe you should comment about the author of the article that, you know, or just offer your opinion and say, geez, I don't see that happening. Simple as that. And we move on. Like half the time, I'll say my opinion and say, like even about Parayko yesterday, I even said, I really don't think that the Blues are going to want to move him. The only way it seems like it could be a possibility would be if the contract negotiations go really poorly and they don't feel they're going to be able to retain him. Of course, the Tarasenko trade might be holding up their cap, and they might be in a financial pickle that they might have to consider it, but they don't really want to do it. So if you listen to what I said, I didn't say that I thought he was going to get traded. I'm just giving my thoughts on the article, and then, you know, you could actually agree with me and say that's probably not going to happen, but just leave your comments in a mature way. That's all I ask. Anyways, seems to be like every video lately. I think it's just getting to that point in the off season where people are wanting more trade activity. It's not happening, so you know, they're just saying, oh, you're just drumming up stuff for views. I'm like, well, you know what? I do make content for the purpose of hoping people watch it. So I guess you're right in a sense, but at the same time, I read a lot, I research a lot, I reference a lot of stuff, and then I give my thoughts on it, I give my analysis on it, and then I want you to do the same. So if you could all do that in a mature way, I'd appreciate it. Again, I don't want to make this sound like this is geared towards a large group. It really isn't, but there's only been like a handful on each video, which is a small percentage. But it's just been, I feel like I have to constantly justify and explain myself, and I don't want to have to feel that way. So moving on, that's all I got to say about that. Now, when it comes to today's trade talk, again, we're referencing articles here. They're not my, you know, anything I'm making up, but I will give you my opinions, and I hope you do the same. Now, on the Anaheim Ducks, I want to reference some articles here coming from Eric Stevens, who writes for The Athletic. Eric Stevens talks about a variety of things in the latest mailbag type article. Now, he talks about some key players, including John Gibson, Josh Manson, Rickard Rakell, and many others, and feels like we're bound to see some trade activity from the Ducks here, whether it be before training camp or during the season. Now, one thing that he did say that I thought was interesting when it comes to John Gibson, I personally would have thought that, you know, the likelihood of him being traded would be slim because he's a really good goaltender. They have him on a long-term contract. The contract's pretty good. You know, obviously without him, they're a much weaker team. But one thing that he makes a good point with is that he believes that John Gibson has been quite frustrated with the club's lack of progress over the past 2 or 3 seasons, and it's impossible to say for certain, but that he may want to request a trade in the near future and get himself onto a more of a winning franchise and have a shot at winning a Stanley Cup before his career is too far into it and things kind of get to the point where it might be, a little bit late. John Gibson's been in the NHL now for quite some time. He's a really solid goaltender. At this point, Gibson's 28 years old and he's signed for 6 more years. So, clearly he has a lot of kind of prime playing time left. So, not to say that he may not be willing to ride it out, but just found it interesting that Stevens thought it was likely or possible, I should say, was probably the operative word here, that he could want out in the near future to get to a more of a winning side of things because of the lack of growth we've seen with this Ducks team. A lot of their prospects, I'll be honest, have not really grown the way they were hoping in the past couple of years. And I think they thought they might be further along. Some of their newer, more recent prospects that were drafted, like Mason McTavish, J.B. Drysdale, Trevor Zegras, they still look really good right now, but they've also haven't had as much time to develop the previous crop before them, like Sam Steele, Troy Terry, Max Jones, all those guys. They just haven't quite developed into being the players they thought they were going to, at least as of yet. Doesn't mean it won't happen, but it just has caused the team's development to really stall out. Now, another interesting tidbit here in this article as well talks about Josh Manson. Now, Manson's a player we've talked about off and on in the rumor mill, possibly drawing some interest from others. And he's 29 years old, right shot defenseman, big, strong guy, can produce a little bit of offense, and he's only got 1 year left in his contract. So he's going to be likely an attractive piece to many teams this coming season. He already has been, even with a second year left on it last year, but a trade's never materialized. But he does go on to say that there is belief that there was a trade worked out between the Anaheim Ducks and the Winnipeg Jets. But Manson nixed the trade because of his modified no trade, that he had the Jets on his list and didn't want to waive, so he ended up remaining in Anaheim, which is interesting to note, considering he's from Saskatchewan. That would have got him pretty close to home. But, Winnipeg's one of those markets that's a little bit unique, a little bit different when it comes to just the city, the environment, and personally, I don't see anything bad about it. But then again, I've never lived there, let alone visited, so obviously some players have a different take on it. It is an area that, for some reason, seems to be not the most favorable when it comes to attracting free agents and stuff like that. So obviously for him, he didn't want to go there. So that's interesting to know, because we know that the Jets are a prime team that I've talked about before that were rumored to have interest in this guy, and he would have been a terrific fit for them, in my opinion. So it is unfortunate for their sake that a trade couldn't be worked out because of his unwillingness to waive that modified no trade clause. But he goes on to mention as well that even Rickard Rakell's garnered a fair bit of interest. When it comes to Manson and Rakell both, it's believed they're looking for first-round picks and a second piece, like some sort of a prospect included in a deal. For the most part, teams are offering one or the other, but not both, which is why we haven't seen a trade yet. I don't have any rumors from him to suggest what the return would have been exactly in a Winnipeg Jet trade if that actually would have went through. But they're not the only players that the Ducks have interest in moving. They have some other veteran players that can be made available here for the right price that they've had talks around off and on, including Kevin Shattenkirk, Adam Henrique, as well as Hampus Lindholm. So I do think the Ducks are a team that I personally don't expect to really rise in the standings a whole heck of a lot this year. And there's a lot of players there that could be turned over. Now, we saw Captain Ryan Getzlaf re-sign for a one-year deal. I think we could throw him into that mix as well, because there was interest possibly for him to leave the Ducks and go to another franchise as he was going through that UFA period and had a chance to talk to other teams. Things got close but never materialized to him leaving the Anaheim Ducks. So we'll see, but I expect them to be a very busy team, and a number of these players, I don't necessarily expect them to be doing a lot of trades before camp. We might see one, it's possible, but for whatever doesn't happen ahead of camp, we'll have a much greater likelihood to happen either during the season or as we approach the 2021-22 NHL trade deadline. Now, moving on to the Ottawa Senators section of today's video, I do want to reference Bruce Garriock of the Ottawa Sun, who was kind of taking a hiatus here from social media for a little while, but made a comeback writing a few articles here as of late. And we also want to look at an NHL.com as well from Mike Zeisberger, also talking about the same sort of thing, but he references a lot of Garriock's points as well as the in recent discussions here. So essentially, I also saw an interview with head coach DJ Smith talking about the fact that as of right now, this roster the way it is, he kind of expects to give Colin White every opportunity to be that number 2 center because of the contract that he was given, former first-round pick, been in there, with the team for a while. He needs to be put in a position to succeed because this is a pivotal year for him. If he does not have a good year, he could find himself on the move, maybe for a fresh start somewhere else. And of course, they lost veteran centers, our team, Anisimov and Derek Stepan in free agency, which they were not upset about. They had no intention of bringing them back. But now it's between Colin White and Shane Pinto, between that number 2, number 3 spot. And essentially, like I said, they want to give White every chance to succeed and put him in a top 6 role if he can play well enough to stay there. But at the same time, they don't want too much pressure on Pinto, especially if things aren't going well with White. So they bring in another player on a shorter-term contract who can be that veteran guy to kind of alleviate some of that pressure. It's been something that's been brought up off and on. And Garriock again mentions a couple of players, both actually being the Strome brothers, Ryan and Dillon, both have been brought up in trade talks. The Senators have expressed interest in either or both players at some point in time over the past couple of months. But both players, I think, are only going to be possibly moved if the right situation with their existing teams materializes. So, for example, when it comes to Dylan Strome, well, word is from the Hawks reporters that if Jonathan Toews cannot go this year, then they're not going to move him. So that Jonathan Toews' future will largely determine Strome's future. So we won't know about that for a little while. And as it comes to Ryan Strome, the Rangers have been in the Jack Eichel sweepstakes. If they pull it off and get Eichel, Strome's likely going to be moved either to the Sabres or elsewhere as a separate deal to shed the salary and to create the space at the center position. And, well, we don't know if they're going to do that yet. So, it's at this point, it's far from a guarantee, right? So both players could be moved, but they may not even be available. And I think another player that could be of interest to the Senators, which is not referenced in this article, what I've seen before, was Sean Monahan in Calgary, but I don't think they're overly crazy about his contract. So the Flames would have to make that interesting, maybe eat some money. I don't know how that would work out if it could, but obviously the Sens are still in that center market to find somebody to come in as like an insurance veteran piece. The other thing I found interesting that I've seen Garriock talk about as well, a variety of pieces here, especially in a recent TSN 1200 radio hit, talking about the fact that they are very, very, very likely, almost a guarantee, to name a captain for the upcoming season. And it's basically going to be Thomas Chabot or Brady Tkachuk, which won't really come as a surprise to anybody. However, I think they would really like to give it to Brady Tkachuk, but it seems like owner Eugene Melnyk doesn't want that to happen unless he signs like an 8-year contract. If he doesn't sign because they did an 8-year deal, it's probably not going to happen because Melnyk's comments basically reflect that they don't want to have a captain, or at least he doesn't, on a bridge deal because they want somebody who's going to commit to the franchise, to be the face of the franchise all the way through this rebuild and beyond to the competitive years. And, they want somebody who's in it for the long haul. They already have Chabot under that long-term deal, and it's going to boil down to how things go on the Tkachuk contract. Now, if Chabot's the captain and Brady wears an A, is that a big deal? I really don't think it is. It doesn't mean that Brady's not going to stay long-term. It doesn't mean really anything changes. They're both great leaders in their own respect. They have a different way of doing it, which is also fine. And I think the Sens are in good hands no matter what. But I just think that according to listening to DJ Smith talk, it sounds like Brady Tkachuk is that guy that drags the team with him into the fight every night. So I think they really want to put the C on his jersey, and have him be the captain. But they only want to do it if he'll sign long-term. And I think the contracts we saw today, especially the Andrei Svechnikov contract, possibly could be a template for that to happen. And it was rumored before that the Sens really are pushing for that long-term deal too. And everything's been quiet with them, just like the Islanders. They've been between him and Batherson and Gustafsson. Like, they all need contracts. There's been very, very little information. Even Bruce Garriock, who's kind of plugged into the Senators, probably better than just about everybody. Many call him the Sens management puppet. Basically, whatever information they want to get out, they usually put through him. And he's saying he's not being told anything, and everything's extremely quiet. So to me, it's hard to judge and peg exactly where negotiations are at. But if we hear Brady Tkachuk signing a long-term deal, you can pretty much guarantee opening night the C will be on his sweater. And if not, he's likely going to have an A, and Shabbat will be the captain, and we'll kind of create the leadership group from there. But either way, I don't really see it being a big deal when it comes to the leadership group. They're both part of it. They're both a huge part of the team's future, and we will see what happens. But if they can get Tkachuk under a long-term deal like Svechnikov, I think that would be terrific for the fan base to have a real win-win situation, to give them some good positive news to look forward to see the owners spending around this core group of guys to give them confidence to say, we're committed to giving you every chance to succeed and to win, and to see how competitive you can be, and to see if all those comments made before from Melnyk saying that this is going to be a championship caliber team in 5-6 years, but we're like 3 years into that now, so we need to see some progress to kind of have any way to believe what he's saying. So it's a time for him to put his money where his mouth is and either put up or shut up. So we'll see where things go in Senators land. So that's all for today. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We will keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you next time.